They thought they could scare me with their rules. But they forgot, I know how to read the fine print better than they do. I still remember the morning it all started. Sunlight was just breaking through my blinds when I heard the sound of something sliding under my front door, a paper. I thought it was just another flyer. But when I picked it up, I froze. It was an official-looking envelope with a bold red stamp on the top corner, HOA notice, immediate attention required. My stomach dropped. I'd just moved into the neighborhood 2 months ago. Paid full in cash. No mortgage, no loans, just me, my little house, and a dream of peace and quiet. I'd worked 20 years in construction, built homes for other people, and finally decided to build one for myself. But apparently, peace was a luxury the HOA didn't want me to have. I tore open the letter. Inside, in the most robotic language possible, it said, "You are in violation of HOA guidelines for improper gravel color on your driveway. You are hereby fined $250, payable within 7 business days." I actually laughed out loud. Gravel color? They wanted to fine me because the small stones on my driveway weren't the approved shade of beige? Are you kidding me? I stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, and stared at my driveway. It was gray, clean, even, professional-grade gravel. I'd personally done it. But apparently, it wasn't community beige. That's when I saw her. Across the street, in her perfectly trimmed lawn, stood Her Majesty, the HOA president, Karen Reynolds. Blonde hair, pink cardigan, and that expression of pure suburban authority. She waved at me, not a friendly wave, though. It was that smug little half-wave people give when they think they've won. I waved back, slow and sarcastic. In my head, I thought, "Lady, you just started a war you're not ready for." That night, I sat at my kitchen table, HOA letter open in front of me. I started reading the bylaws, all 54 pages of them. My background in construction had taught me to love small details, and boy, these bylaws were full of them. Clause 14b, driveway material must be uniform in texture and color consistent with community aesthetics. Clause 14c, any material deviation must be approved by the HOA board. Clause 21f, members of the HOA board must ensure fair and consistent enforcement of all rules. That last one caught my eye. Because just 2 houses down, the vice president of the HOA, a guy named Tom, had a black asphalt driveway, not beige gravel. Yet, he wasn't fined. Gotcha. The next morning, I printed out pictures. Tom's house, my house, Karen's driveway, and the rule itself. I stapled them all together with a letter that simply said, "Dear HOA, before I pay this fine, please ensure that all other driveways are also in compliance with the same standard. Sincerely, the guy with the gray gravel." I hand-delivered it to their office. 2 days later, another letter came. This one was nastier. "Your behavior has been noted as hostile and uncooperative. Continued violations will result in further fines or legal action." That's when I knew they weren't here to maintain community standards. They were here to control people. But I wasn't the kind of man you could scare with paper threats. So that night, I poured myself a whiskey, opened my laptop, and decided, if they wanted to play the fine game, I'd play it better. Because every HOA rule they had, I was about to use it against them. I spent the next 3 nights buried in paperwork. While most people were sleeping, I was highlighting every line of the HOA bylaws like it was a treasure map. And you know what? It was a treasure map, a map to their downfall. The more I read, the more I realized how sloppy they were. Half their rules weren't even legally enforceable. Some didn't have dates. Others referenced sections that didn't exist anymore. It was like a bunch of bored neighbors playing pretend government. Then I found Clause 32d. That one made me smile, the kind of smile that only comes when you know you're about to flip the entire game. It said, "Any HOA member who demonstrates non-compliance with stated standards forfeits the right to enforce penalties on other members until compliance is restored." In plain English? If they broke the rules, they couldn't fine anyone else. So I grabbed my camera and went for a walk. I started with Karen's house. Her lawn looked like a country club, sure, but there it was, a brand new solar light fixture at the end of her driveway. Not approved by the HOA. Then Tom's black asphalt driveway, still there, bold as ever. Then Mark, the HOA treasurer, had a non-regulation mailbox, too tall by exactly 2 inches. Click, click, click. Photos of every single violation. I put them in a neat little folder titled Community Compliance Audit. That weekend, the HOA called for a special meeting at the clubhouse. When I showed up, the room went quiet. Karen stood at the front, clutching her clipboard like it was a sword. "Mr. Carter," she started, "we've received multiple complaints about your unapproved driveway material." I raised my hand. "Before you continue, I'd like to submit something for the record. I dropped a manila folder on the table, the same one full of photographs. Karen frowned. What is this? I leaned forward, calm and confident. Evidence, I said, of HOA board members violating their own code of compliance. Clause 32D, subsection 2. I'd like these violations recorded before we discuss mine. The room went silent. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Mark cleared his throat. Karen's face turned red. That clause isn't relevant to this situation, she snapped. I smiled. Oh, it's very relevant. See, until the board members themselves comply, they can't fine anyone else. Which means, legally, you can't fine me either. A few neighbors chuckled quietly. The control was slipping from her hands, and she knew it. Karen's voice trembled. We'll review this matter later. Meeting adjourned. I walked out, trying not to grin too much. But inside, man, it felt good. For the first time since this all started, I realized something: these people weren't powerful. They were just loud. And once someone stood up to them, their entire act fell apart. The next morning, I found an envelope on my porch again. This time, it didn't say, fine notice. It said, pending review. I laughed, took a sip of coffee, and looked out at my beautiful gray driveway. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because I'd just discovered another loophole, one that would let me turn the HOA's own rules into a weapon. And this time, I wouldn't just defend myself. I'd make them pay. I wasn't just fighting fines anymore, I was fighting a system built on fear. The HOA didn't care about driveways, lawns, or fences. They cared about control. And once you understand what someone truly wants, you know exactly how to destroy them. So, I started digging deeper. Every HOA meeting was recorded, stored in public archives. Every board member's name, contact, and property detail was public info. They loved to act powerful, but their secrets were hiding in plain sight. Late one night, I sat at my desk with a pot of coffee and a plan. I began filing formal requests under the state's homeowner transparency law, something they clearly forgot existed. Within a week, I had everything. Invoices showing they overcharged residents. Emails between Karen and the landscaper, approving payments for work that was never done. Even private notes about using HOA funds for a board appreciation dinner at a 5-star restaurant. It was corruption wrapped in community service. I compiled it all into a single document titled HOA Financial Review, 2023. Then I printed 10 copies and slid one into every mailbox on my street. By morning, the neighborhood was on fire, not literally, but socially. People were talking. Neighbors who used to nod politely now stood in clusters, whispering, pointing, demanding answers. By noon, Karen's car was parked outside my house. She was red-faced, shaking, barely holding her composure. You had no right to distribute that, she snapped. I stepped outside calmly, hands in my pockets. I didn't distribute anything that isn't public record, I said. You just didn't expect anyone to actually read it. Her jaw clenched. You're done here, Carter. We'll sue you for defamation. I smiled. Then I'll subpoena your financial records in open court. You sure you want that? For a moment, she didn't say a word. Then she turned, storming off, her heels clicking on the pavement like gunshots. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the sunset bleed across the sky. For the first time, the neighborhood felt quiet, peaceful. No envelopes. No threats. Just silence. But silence is never permanent. The next day, I got a letter from the HOA's attorney. It wasn't a fine. It wasn't even a warning. It was an invitation to a private board meeting. No residents allowed. They wanted to talk, in the dark. I looked at that letter and smiled. Because I already knew, the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The letter sat on my kitchen table all morning. The words, private HOA board meeting, printed neatly across the top like an official decree, but to me, it looked more like bait. They wanted me alone, behind closed doors. No witnesses. No cameras. No neighbors to hear the lies they were about to spin. But here's the thing, I wasn't scared anymore. For weeks, they'd tried to corner me with rules, fines, and fake authority. Now they were the ones cornered. So yeah, I was going to that meeting. But I wasn't going unprepared. I loaded my phone with voice recorder apps, checked my hidden lapel mic, and slipped a second phone into my pocket, camera on, recording the whole thing. If they wanted a private meeting, fine. I'd make it public later. The sun had just started to sink when I arrived at the clubhouse. The parking lot was empty except for 3 cars, Karen's red SUV, Tom's black truck, and a sleek silver sedan that screamed lawyer. Inside, the air felt thick, like the calm before a thunderstorm. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the faint smell of coffee and cheap air freshener filled the room. They were all there, Karen at the head of the table, Tom and Mark on either side, and a stranger in a navy suit at the end. "Mr. Carter," the lawyer said, gesturing to an empty chair, "thank you for coming." I sat down, steady, calm. Karen didn't smile. She looked like someone who'd swallowed fire and was trying not to cough. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Let's keep this civil. The board feels your recent actions, distributing internal documents, making accusations, have caused significant harm to this community's reputation." I leaned back. "You mean your reputation?" Karen's jaw tightened. "You're undermining authority, Carter. You're creating division." "Division?" I said. "You did that when you started running this place like a dictatorship." Tom slammed his hand on the table. "That's enough." I didn't flinch. "Or what, Tom? You'll find me again? You already can't. Clause 32D, remember?" The lawyer raised his hand, calm but firm. "Let's not escalate. Mr. Carter, the board is offering a resolution. If you agree to issue a written apology to the residents and retract your statements, we'll drop all pending reviews and restore your compliance status." I stared at him. "You want me to apologize for telling the truth?" "It's in everyone's best interest," he said smoothly. "Otherwise, we'll pursue legal action for defamation and breach of HOA confidentiality." I couldn't help but laugh, not out of disrespect, but disbelief. "Confidentiality? You're a public board, using residents' money. There is no confidentiality. And as for defamation, truth isn't defamation." Karen's eyes flicked to the lawyer. She was losing control again. "You think you're some kind of hero, Carter? You're just a troublemaker with a camera." I smiled. "Funny. That's exactly what they said about every person who ever stood up to a bully." The room fell silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner and the ticking of a cheap wall clock. Then the lawyer leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, I advise you to think carefully. Litigation is expensive. Even if you win, it'll cost you time and money." I looked him dead in the eye. "Then I guess it's a good thing I already contacted the state attorney's office." That got their attention. Karen blinked. "You, what?" "Oh, yeah," I said casually. "See, I figured if there's financial misconduct in a registered homeowners association, that falls under state jurisdiction. So I sent them everything, the invoices, the dinner receipts, even those emails between you and the landscaper." Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat. You can't just." "I already did," I said. "And you know what the best part is?" They responded. "They're opening an investigation." The color drained from Karen's face. The lawyer straightened his tie, suddenly quieter. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to stop harassing residents with illegal fines. You're going to make the HOA records public, as required by law. And if you don't," I tapped my phone on the table, "this recording goes online tonight." Tom looked furious. "You wouldn't dare." I smiled. "Try me." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Karen stared at me like she wanted to burn me alive with her eyes. Then she finally stood up, voice trembling with rage. "This meeting is over." She grabbed her folder, stormed out, heels echoing through the empty hall. Tom followed, muttering curses under his breath. The lawyer stayed behind, exhaled slowly, then said, "You've made your point, Mr. Carter." I nodded. "And you've made yours." When I stepped outside, the sky was painted in deep orange and purple. I took a long breath, the cool evening air filling my lungs. For the first time in months, I felt something new, power. Not the kind that comes from authority or fear, but the kind that comes from standing your ground. That night, I uploaded the entire meeting audio to a private cloud, just in case. And then I did something that shocked even me. I drafted a letter, not to the HOA, but to every homeowner in the community. It read, "You deserve transparency. You deserve fairness. You deserve leadership that serves, not rules. If you're tired of being controlled, it's time to take back your neighborhood. I'm running for HOA president." By the time I hit send, it was past midnight. Outside, the street was quiet. But inside, I could feel the storm brewing. Because the next chapter of this war wasn't about survival anymore. It was about taking control. When I woke up that morning, my inbox was already exploding. Emails from neighbors, messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years, all saying the same thing, "We're with you." By noon, the entire neighborhood knew about my letter. Some called me brave. Others called me crazy. But every single one of them was talking. And in a place ruled by silence and fear, talking was the first crack in the wall. The HOA board tried to bury it at first. They sent out a clarification notice, claiming I was spreading misinformation. But by then, it was too late. People had already seen the proof, the invoices, the fake expenses, the lies. The board's image of power was melting faster than snow in the sun. So, a week later, when the HOA posted a small flyer announcing upcoming election for board positions, it didn't surprise me. They wanted to tighten control again, to reset the board with loyal people. But this time, I was on the ballot. The following days felt like walking through a storm made of whispers. Neighbors would stop me while mowing their lawns or walking their dogs. "Carter, are you really running? Do you think you can win?" Karen's been calling people, trying to scare them out of voting. I just smiled. Let her call. Fear only works if people listen. At night, I worked on my speech. Simple words, from the heart, no politics, no fake promises. I wasn't running for power. I was running for peace. The day of the election came on a Saturday morning. The clubhouse was packed, more people than I'd ever seen there before. Every chair was taken, and even the hallway was full. Karen stood at the front, flanked by Tom and Mark. They looked nervous, that same false confidence in their smiles, like poker players holding losing cards. When I walked in, a few people clapped quietly. Karen tapped the mic, her voice tight. "Let's begin," she said. "Each candidate will have 5 minutes to speak. Then we'll proceed with the vote." She spoke first, reading from a sheet of paper. Her words were polished, about unity, tradition, and respecting community standards. But it all sounded hollow. Even she didn't seem to believe it. When she finished, the room was quiet, polite applause, nothing more. Then it was my turn. I walked up to the podium. No papers. No script. Just me. "Good morning," I began, scanning the crowd. "Most of you already know who I am, or at least, who they told you I am." A few chuckles rippled through the room. They said I was a troublemaker. A loudmouth. Someone who doesn't follow the rules. I paused. Maybe that's true. But when the rules are written to protect the powerful and punish everyone else, maybe breaking them isn't wrong. Maybe it's necessary. Heads nodded. A murmur spread through the room. "I'm not here to destroy this community," I continued. "I'm here to protect it, from fear, from corruption, from the people who forgot that an HOA isn't supposed to control us, it's supposed to serve us." Karen shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Every dollar we pay should go where it's supposed to go. Every rule should apply to everyone. No more double standards. No more favoritism." I let the silence settle. "If you vote for me, I won't promise perfection. But I'll promise transparency. You'll know where your money goes. You'll know who makes decisions. You'll finally have a voice again." Then I looked straight at Karen. And that's something some people here don't want. The crowd erupted, applause, whistles, even cheers. Karen's face froze, the smile gone. When I stepped down, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Because in that moment, I knew, whatever happened next, the old HOA was finished. The voting took an hour. People lined up outside the clubhouse, some holding their ballots like protest signs. Others whispered words of encouragement as they passed me. By sunset, the votes were counted. Karen stood at the front, her voice barely steady. "The results are in," she said. "For HOA president." She hesitated, eyes flicking toward me. "Mr. Carter." The room erupted. Applause thundered against the walls. People stood, clapping, shouting my name. Karen dropped her papers and walked off the stage, her heels echoing like surrender. Tom followed. Mark didn't even look back. For the first time in years, the room belonged to the people. That night, I sat alone on my porch, watching the lights flicker across the quiet neighborhood. It looked the same houses, same trees, same driveways. But it felt different. The fear that once hung in the air was gone. The neighbors who used to avoid eye contact now waved as they passed. It wasn't perfect, but it was free. I took out my phone, scrolled through the old photos, the fines, the warnings, the threats, and deleted them one by one. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I didn't need them anymore. Weeks later, we held our first community meeting under the new board. No lawyers. No threats. Just coffee, donuts, and open conversation. People laughed. They shared ideas. They argued, but honestly this time. And when the topic of Carter's driveway came up again, everyone laughed. Someone said, "Maybe we should make that the new standard." I grinned. "Be careful, I might fine you for copying me." The laughter filled the room, warm and real. As the meeting ended, an old neighbor named Mrs. Reed, the kind of quiet woman who never spoke much, came up to me. She smiled softly and said, "You know, it's been years since I felt proud to live here." That hit me harder than any victory speech. Because that's what it was all about, not revenge, not winning, but belonging. Later that night, as I turned off the porch light, I noticed something on my doorstep, a small envelope, handwritten. I opened it carefully. Inside was a short note. "You may have won this round, Carter. But the game isn't over." No name. Just the HOA letterhead. I stared at it for a long moment, then smiled. Because they were right. The game never really ends. But this time, it was being played on my terms. 6 months. That's how long peace lasted. The lawn stayed green. The mailboxes stopped carrying threats. And for the first time in years, people actually waved to each other. We rebuilt the neighborhood, not with concrete and paint, but with trust. Every month, we held open meetings. Every expense was public. Every voice was heard. For the first time, this wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a community. And yet, I could still feel her shadow. Karen. Even after she'd resigned, after she'd stormed out of that election in defeat, her presence lingered. Like smoke that refuses to leave the room. One cold morning, a neighbor named Tom, not the old bored Tom, but a different one, knocked on my door. "Hey, Carter," he said, holding a letter. "You might want to see this." It was an envelope, postmarked 2 states away. No return address. Just a neat cursive handwriting that felt oddly familiar. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Enjoy your little victory. Some of us are just getting started." At the bottom, a signature. Karen. At first, I laughed it off. It felt desperate, like an old ghost trying to rattle chains one last time. But a week later, strange things started happening. A permit request I'd submitted to the city for a new playground, denied. No explanation. Then, an inspection notice for community safety compliance. Then, the bank froze our HOA account due to a formal complaint of mismanagement. Coincidence? No. Someone was pulling strings. And I already knew who. I started investigating quietly. Turns out, Karen had taken a job at a regional HOA consulting firm, the same firm now auditing our community. She couldn't control us from inside, so she was trying to control us from above. I gathered every document, every email, every notice, and built a case. But this time, I wasn't going to confront her with anger. I was going to end it with precision. A few weeks later, the consulting firm scheduled an official visit. 3 representatives came to the clubhouse, one of them was Karen. She walked in wearing a navy blazer and a polite, corporate smile. But behind that smile, I saw it, the same fire, the same ego, the same hunger for control. "Mr. Carter," she said sweetly, extending her hand. "Good to see you again." I didn't shake it. "You're not welcome here, Karen. Not after what you did." "Oh, I'm not here as a resident," she said. "I'm here as an auditor." Her smile sharpened. "You understand, of course, protocol." I leaned forward. "You're here because you couldn't stand losing." She tilted her head. "Call it what you want. But if I find anything out of order, even the smallest error, your HOA will be suspended, and the city will appoint a temporary manager." Her eyes glittered. "And we both know who they'll call for that job." For the next hour, she tore through our files like a vulture, nitpicking, twisting, fabricating irregularities. But she didn't know one thing. I'd been expecting this. Every document she reviewed was double-signed, time-stamped, and recorded, with witnesses. Every penny was accounted for. Every rule followed to the letter. When she finally looked up from her papers, frustration was written all over her face. "Everything looks unusually clean," she muttered. I smiled. "That's because it's honest. Try it sometime." Her fake grin faded. "This isn't over, Carter." I leaned closer. "No, Karen. It was over 6 months ago. You just never learned how to move on." But that wasn't the end. Not yet. Because 2 days later, I received an email from the State Homeowners Oversight Bureau. Karen had filed a formal complaint against me personally, accusing me of misuse of funds and unethical leadership. It was her final move. A legal attack designed to drag me down in paperwork and hearings until I broke. But she didn't realize. I had one last card left too. When the hearing day came, the conference room was packed, state officials, lawyers, and even a few reporters. Karen sat across from me, papers stacked like a fortress. She smiled, confident. "I hope you brought your records, Carter." I did. But I also brought something else, a flash drive. When it was my turn, I stood up, plugged it in, and played a video on the projector. It was a recording, from that private meeting months ago. The one where Karen threatened me, the lawyer warned me, and the entire board tried to intimidate me into silence. Their voices echoed through the room. "You'll regret this, Carter. This meeting is over. You can't expose us." Every word was clear. Every threat undeniable. When the video ended, the room was silent. Karen's face went pale. The lead investigator looked at her. "Ms. Wallace, care to explain this recording?" She stammered. That was taken out of context." I crossed my arms. Context doesn't change truth. The verdict didn't take long. The Bureau dismissed all her claims. And within a week, the firm she worked for fired her for professional misconduct. Just like that, her empire of control, her illusion of power, was gone. But I didn't celebrate. I just felt peace. A month later, I was walking home from the park when I saw a "for sale" sign on a house at the far end of the street. Karen's old house. The curtains were gone, the windows empty. For the first time, it looked like what it had always been, just a house. Not a throne. I stood there for a moment, the wind rustling through the trees. And then I smiled. Because I finally understood something. It was never about winning. It was about ending the game. That night, I sat on my porch again, the same spot where this all began. The crickets were singing, the stars hung low, and the driveway glowed under the porch light. My gray driveway. The one they said I couldn't have. I whispered to myself, almost laughing. Funny how something so small can start a war, and end one too. I leaned back, took a sip of coffee, and closed my eyes. The neighborhood was finally quiet again. Truly quiet. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of peace.